Here we go. We are back. It's been a minute, everybody, but Jason, Smith, and myself, the Demo Guys, we are back with you. This is episode 10 of the Demo Guys podcast. Thank you to everybody joining us live on YouTube and LinkedIn Live and also Facebook, or if you're watching the recording, I want to thank you for checking us out as well. Busy show today. We've got some topics that Jason and I will discuss that are very pertinent in the world of CPG, and then we will get to our main event towards the end of the show, which will be our red flags, green flags in terms of hiring brand ambassadors to be the face of your brand at events and inside of the grocery stores. But first, we've got a big announcement to make. We've got another new sponsor, and I'm excited about this one. We are officially sponsored now by Promo Mash, our good friends at Promo Mash. Thanks to Yuval. But this episode is indeed brought to you by Promo Mash, which is literally what we use to run our demo programs. Promo Mash is the official CRM of the Demo Guys podcast. Both Jason and I are now on the platform. I've been using it for years now. Jason bringing Velocity Goats to Promo Mash as well. But we're just not just talking about it. We're in it every day, from scheduling and staffing to tracking demo results and making sure every store visit actually happens. Promo Mash is the platform that helps us stay sane. Before Promo Mash, it was spreadsheets, texts, guessing, chasing down reps. All of that chaos. Now we've got real visibility. We know what's working, and our field teams actually feel supported. And we're not alone. Hundreds of the most well-known CPG brands are using Promo Mash to grow their demo programs, scale their teams, and finally see some ROI. As I mentioned, I've been using Promo Mash for years. When I was working on the brand side, I made sure that I brought my brands to the Promo Mash platform because I wanted to work with the best CRM in field marketing, and that is Promo Mash. So if you're still juggling demos on Google Sheets, do yourself a favor and check out Promo Mash. And if that wasn't enough, Promo Mash also helps you clean up the back end, including deductions, trade spend, and other financial details that often get overlooked. Go to promomash.com and tell them the Demo Guys sent you. I cannot speak highly enough of Promo Mash and Yuval. I use it every day. I was using it right before we started the podcast. I was scheduling demos for one of our brand partners and getting everything set up, creating a demo calendar. But, Promo Mash is not just for field marketing. Yuval has evolved the platform, and there are services there that can help you with trade spend management and that can also help you with deductions. We talk about deductions here and now with some of the distributors out there, and Yuval has been through the wars, and he's created tools that can help you navigate those waters. So special thanks to Promo Mash and Yuval for sponsoring the Demo Guys podcast. But Jason, want to cover some ground here. This is episode 10 of the Demo Guys podcast. We haven't been on for a couple weeks. Busy summer for both of us. A lot of things going on. But there, some topics for us to discuss. And, it's been quiet from a news perspective the last couple of weeks in CPG. It was a very busy summer, but it seems to be slowing down a little bit. But there are some things that have gone on in our everyday lives in terms of interactions with clients and customers and just what we've been seeing in the stores. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that and get some thoughts on there. And the first thing that I wanted to bring up, it's a mutual friend of ours that is a brand owner. I'm going to keep the brand's name confidential just to protect the innocent. But she made a great point when in talking to her a couple weeks back on a call. And she has, a product that has dairy in it. And we were talking about just the market and the way things have been evolving. And she, said that dairy is making a comeback. I believe that dairy and meat are making a comeback. We're seeing the sagging sales continue for plant-based meats, quote unquote meats. I read an article on LinkedIn earlier this week, a pretty well-known restaurant that was all plant-based. They've now revisited that policy. They're now including meat in the menu. But Jason, what, just from your observations, because you're in the stores almost every other day, you're talking to founders just as much as I am, if not more so. What are your thoughts on that statement that dairy is making a comeback?
I think it's a very profound statement. From experience, I've seen a lot of innovation in the set, especially, I'm coming from Ithaca Hummus. So, I still pay attention to that set more than probably any 4-floor, 8-foot space in any retailer right now. I casually just walk by, but I've been also realizing a lot of demos coming out for Lebna, which is a huge, it's been around thousands of years. It's similar to like, if you in a nutritional profile, it's similar to Greek yogurt, right? But it's got a more savory, kind of a more tangy taste to it, to say, and it's, like I said, it's been around thousands of years. Before, they had refrigeration. Fermentation was key, and that was one of the foods that was consumed a lot in parts in the Middle East and parts out there. And so it's been around a long time. It's just now starting to really find its place in the United States. So that would be definitely one place I'm seeing where it's really picked up. I was really excited too. Like when I was at the fancy food shows, I met the Painterland sisters, and I'm actually someone who has issues with dairy now. I just never even assumed this would happen with old age, but dairy and me just don't get along like it used to. I'm not that old, but I'm in my 50s now, and digesting it's not as easy as it used to be. But I found that products, they gave me a free coupon to use, and I went to my local Whole Foods and picked one up, and sure enough, I had no issues consuming it, and now I'm a huge fan. And great products, great products. So yeah, I mean, those are just two of the players that I've seen are newer in the space that are really making a huge play. Any that you're going to call out, Sam? Any ones that you can think of?
No, just that, I know that there was a big plant-based push, and I'm all for plant-based foods. If they have good ingredients, we need our nutrients, we need our vitamins. I believe in a balanced diet. I don't believe in, just being all one way, all one side or the other. But I believe there was a lot of hesitancy when it came to innovation and pushing products that were heavily based with dairy. But I think we're seeing a change there. We're seeing a lot more people, in my experience, just talking to people that were not consuming whey protein. They were trying to get their protein fix through plant-based proteins, and they've kind of, have said that, I just wasn't getting the same impact from a plant-based protein diet compared to, using whey protein supplements. So, I think that, if there's founders out there and they're working on innovations, they're in the lab, they're coming out with some ideas, some concepts, and maybe they've been gun shy in the past. Hey, is this now the time to develop and promote and push a dairy-based product when so many of the trends have been plant-based? And I think that we are seeing a reversal of fortune within that regard. And I would tell a founder that if you've got a great concept, if you got a product that tastes great, that's nutrient dense, that's that it's functional and it has a lot to offer the marketplace, don't be afraid to invest and get that product out there, because like the founder that I spoke to said, dairy is making a comeback. I'm seeing it when I do demos. I'm not doing demos as frequently as I used to, but when I do them, I just unscientific poll, I'm encountering less and less people that are very rigid when it comes to something only being plant-based. I have friends that have been plant-based for years, and a friend of mine named Dave Locust, who I used to work with at Super Coffee, like a couple months back, he shocked me, and because he was plant-based guy. And he's like, yeah, I'm eating cheesesteaks again. And, we would go to lunch when, we were work together, we'd go on sales blitzes together, and he was always looking for the vegan meal. And, all of a sudden now he's gone back to consuming meat and consuming dairy. So it's very interesting. A new trend here that I would say things are coming back. Meat's coming back. You know what's not coming back, Jason?
What's
beer? Beer. We were talking about this last night when we met up. When I was on vacation, it was a working vacation. I was down in Avalon, New Jersey last week, and I was by the pool, my girlfriend and I had an energy drink, clean ingredient energy drink, and I almost got tackled by a beverage distributor from a region of Pennsylvania. I'm not going to identify the guy, but it was a Budweiser distributor in Pennsylvania, and he recognized the drink. It's not out on the market yet. Some friends of mine have sent it to me to get me to try it out, but it's gotten some buzz on social media. and he got super excited, wanted, details, wanted to know who I knew, how I got, obtained the actual drink, and how he could, if I could connect him with this company. And, we just got to talking. Real nice guy, real knowledgeable. He's a VP of this, distributor. And, we were just talking about how beer sales have gone down. And the reason why he's so interested in this energy drink is because his trucks are not full anymore. And he's got to keep the trucks full. And to people that have been following the beverage industry closely, this is nothing new. This has been going on for 4 or 5 years now, with the big corporate beer having to diversify in terms of what they're carrying on those trucks. And it used to be all beer, nothing but beer on those trucks. And that there's been a change with the decline in beer sales, and those trucks have to stay full. You look at the major, beer companies, it's unique in that they own their own factories. They own their own trucks. Granted, they're working with distributors, but they're well connected to corporate beer. Those distributors, they all have the, especially the Budweisers. It's all Eagle this, Eagle that. Even though they're supposedly separate entities, they have a really strong tie-in to corporate Budweiser. But the trucks have to stay full in order for the financial ecosystem to work. So companies like Budweiser, they've been diversifying for years now. And I was talking to the gentleman, the VP of this distributor, and he's like, look, not only is beer not going to make a comeback, he goes, it's just going to keep declining. As people get older, a lot of drinkers are kind of no longer in the consumer pool. And then the younger generation that's coming up, they're less interested in alcohol. I read a stat today that in the 70s at one point, 71% of the population would consider themselves, regular drinkers. That was that was in the 70s. And now it's gone all the way down to 51% of the population. That's 49% of the population that they just really don't consume alcohol anymore. And that's a drastic change. But, Jason, you've worked in all different genres within CPG. If you were a beverage distributor and you had to, your primary cash cow had been beer for years, but you had to pivot, what are some of the types of beverages that you would look to kind of contract with to get on your trucks?
That's a great question, Sam. And I've actually had this conversation with a VP of Savannah Distribution a couple of years ago. I was building out a DSD network, helping build out a DSD network for Clean Cause with Kroger, right? And they're Savannah Distribution, if you're not aware of them, great big player, out of Atlanta area, more Georgia area, taps down in Florida, but great people to work with. And they were telling me like 10 to 20% of their portfolio is going to go more to non-alcoholic drinks. And that's why they were, interested in Clean Causes, yerba mate. And there's a lot of other brands right now I've seen really starting to take some share from even just the energy drink space is changing a little bit, whereas I'm seeing a lot more beverages in tune with more of an adaptogenic kind of atmosphere instead of causing that, that caffeine high and then crash. Kind of like Zenjoy is one that comes to mind. That's kind of addressing like the adrenals, but also, having the support for some energy. Ringa is another one. It's a Moringa drink that I just became familiar with not too long ago. 15 calories, a fantastic taste. I see those really starting to make a big difference. Maybe even in fine wine and spirits, places like that, where they need to start, just like you mentioned. Yes. 51 to 49% of the population is now going to non-alcoholic. There's got to be more options out there, right? So definitely something to keep watching. I do think there's going to be a massive play for the THC drinks.
Yes, I was about to bring that up. Yep.
Because I was speaking with one of the VPs from Delray, which is one of those brands that's starting to make a lot of noise in that space. Same thing. They're taking share away from the alcohol, and they even say it. They make that claim straight out. Like we're winning on this now. So it's an interesting time. So.
Yeah, and I talk to younger people. They just don't want the hangover.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of health issues associated with alcohol and drinking on a regular basis. Full disclosure, I am a drinker. I don't drink a ton, but I do drink. Jason, we were hanging out last night. I was drinking statesides. I'm not going to deny it. I like statesides, but I know that I am of a different generation, and the younger generation, they have a different perspective on that. And, you look at the categories of challengers to the alcohol beverages, and you kind of outlined them, but I think you've got the all natural energy drinks. The two that you mentioned, another one that I'm a big fan of is called Ardor. It's newer. It's on. You can get it at Whole Foods and Sprouts. But a lot of these energy drinks now that then I believe some of them are truly clean because they're using green tea as the caffeine source. They're not using all of these chemicals as the caffeine source, and then they're cutting it. I shouldn't say cutting it, but they're adding in L-theanine to help manage that caffeinated experience, so you're not getting that jitters and the crash. And then you have the drinks that are nootropic based and have the adaptogens, but aren't geared towards energizing, but more towards relaxation. We have a client, Cirilla, that we work with. It's a really good product, a good story. And that's a brand where, we've seen some growth there. Hop water is kind of in that category, but in a little bit of a different category because it has the hop. So it's going after the crowd that, it might be used to consuming beer, still wants to kind of kick back and relax, but, maybe they don't want to do that on a Wednesday or Thursday night when they've got to go into work the next day. And then the other category that you touched on are those THC beverages, which, it's tough for those companies right now because of the regulations, because we do have a couple THC clients and, we're big believers in them, but we've seen, and we've gone through the battles with them with changing regulations, and it's just not legal in every state yet. I believe that it will be, but it's going to take time. And when it does open up, every state, you're going to see some of these companies that have been bootstrapping it, that have been struggling. It's going to be a massive change for them. And some of these companies that, if they can survive this period of uncertainty and this period of limitations in terms of where they can get purchase orders from, if they can just survive the next few years, there could potentially be a huge pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. And I think that's when you'll probably see the corporations really start to take a long look at the THC. I mean, I've some of them have dabbled and made some investments and put some of those brands in their incubator programs, but they haven't, really gone out and pushed those brands en masse because, quite frankly, there's a limited market share right now due to all the regulations. So there are so many options that are coming up that are very exciting. As my printer goes off in the background, no idea why, but one other point I'll make with hop water, hop water, the marketing is excellent, and they're smart to sell it. They sell it in singles, but really they push the 6-packs and the cases. And for for a product like Cirilla and products like that have the nootropics and adaptogens, it's very important to get to a point where you can sell it in a 4-pack or 6-pack. Reason being is because those benefits are really there. I've experienced them, but I don't experience them after one can. When I would drink hop water, I first started drinking it, I'm like, I'm not feeling the relaxation benefits. When I would get into can number 3, can number 4, that's when I would feel what I would refer to as the float. Just a real peaceful, relaxed feeling, not drowsy. I can get behind the wheel of a car, no problem. But you need to be able to sell that experience to the consumer, because once they achieve that experience, they are going to be a loyalist. Yeah. So, you got to make sure that you try to position your product in stores so that it can be purchased in a way that it can be consumed and offer that full experience to the customer. Last topic I want to get into here, Jason. It's been a crazy couple weeks. I know that we talked about this last night. We heard from a lot of friends in the industry last couple of weeks with a lot of fire drills. And some of them are our clients. And for me, if they're my client, no matter what the situation is, I'm going to do everything I can help them out. But we've got some friends and some colleagues in the industry that have reached out to you and I separately with some last minute issues. And it's been, it's been a struggle to try to help them out because for me, I can't speak for you. I can speak for me. My first priority is to my clients. They're the ones that are supporting me, that are allowing me to live underneath my roof, provide put food on my family's table, and if I do have time left over, sure, I'll help some people out that may not be on our client roster and do what we can. I don't want to turn people away and be a jerk, but my priorities have to always lie in with our customers. And the thing that I've referred a couple people to that came to me with some Mission Impossibles this week, that things popped up last minute. I tell them, like, look, trustedherd.com. It's going to sound like a sponsored read. It's not. Trusted Herd's not a sponsor of the Demo Guys podcast, but Jason and I both use it. A lot of other people in our field use it in the realm of CPG field marketing, but I don't know if all founders know about it. And what Trusted Herd is, it's a community for brand ambassadors looking to get gig work. They're looking to get hired. All different types of gigs, whether it be events, conventional grocery store demos, trade shows. I've had companies come to me the last couple months asking for merchandising help. And, we do light merchandising before and after our demos, but my company, Brand Ambassador Consultants, we are not merchandisers. We're not going to go into the stores and hit, 6, 7, 8 locations and reset shelves and place shippers. It's just not what we do. But I know that there are brands out there that need that, and they need it on a micro level, not a macro level. And it's tough because with the major merchandising companies that are out there, their onboarding minimums have gone up. I mean, they're not taking on clients unless there's a big commitment there, because they're at bandwidth in many cases. So to make it worth it to them to bring in a new client, it's got to be substantial for them from a financial perspective. But you have some of these smaller emerging brands that may only have a few stores here and there. Maybe they're infra stores, maybe they're bodegas in New York. They're not going to pay a $20,000 onboarding fee, make that minimum commitment for just a few stores here and there in different pockets of the country. So, and I tell them, look, it's not what we do, but go to trustedherd.com, put an ad up. It's $9 per ad, and interview the applicants directly. And then, you have your own little merchandising team. But, I know, Jason, I'm preaching to the choir here. We were talking about it last night. Just, when you get these last minute requests, how do you respond to them? What's your best advice for the founders that are bootstrapped, that they have these emergencies and they need some support last minute?
I mean, you nailed it. I think Trusted Herd is the place to go for that kind of thing. As much as I want to help, and I've been in the same situation as I've even actually asked you, because I'm in that situation. I'm like, hey Sam, any chance you've got some availability and Plentiful Harvest and some others as well. Like I'm trying to, anyone I can help, I'll try to help. But at the end of the day, like, I think we all know if any brand ambassador that's worth their weight in gold is already booked, right? Like if you need somebody 2 or 3 days out, chances are it's going to be really slim pickings. And the people that you do get, I don't know if they're going to be good or not. You might get lucky. Somebody got a cancellation and you get a rock star or whatever we want to call it. The people are great at what they do. But I think it's one of those things, like, planning is everything. And yeah, things come up that are unknown. I honestly think a lot of brands put way too much pressure on themselves. Honestly, I think retailers will have some grace if it's a one-off thing that just happens out of the blue. Yeah. Like if you can make it up in a few weeks with somebody or something, I'm sure they wouldn't. I mean, obviously there's different, some products are much more perishable than others. So, there's a fine line that I'm walking there, but in the long run, I do believe if you have a good reputation, a good relationship with any retailer out there, if something falls through 2 or 3 days before, the event's happening, it can be rescheduled. It's not surgery. This isn't a life death experience here. So, but that said, I know I'm saying that, but I know as a founder, I put a lot of pressure on myself to always deliver too. So,
and to piggyback on that comment, about the brand ambassadors that are available, especially this time of year, most brand ambassadors that are worth their salt, their schedule is booked out, and you have to wonder if somebody's available at this time of year on 1 to 2 days notice. It's one of two things. either one, they're not very good, they burned some bridges and they can't get booked on a regular basis and they're available, or they are already booked and they're willing to dump their existing gig for your gig because you're paying more money and they're all about the money. So just be careful of that. It's always good to try to get ahead of these situations and plan ahead. I see too many times with companies where field marketing is always on the back burner for them, and they don't get it. They don't get to it until the last minute, until it's too late, and then suddenly it's an urgent priority. It's a hurry up and wait situation, and you've got it's tough to live that way. It's tough to operate that way. You got to get ahead of things. You've got to be organized, and you got to plan. But Jason, we've got some questions from our top or comments. We've got a lot of comments today, so I want to bring some of those up right now. Lauren Wall, our producer, she helps us out a lot. That new overlay you see at the top with the sponsors, Retail Row and Promo Match. Lauren helped me out with that. She actually designed it. My first attempt of it was garbage. But Lauren, I turned it over to Lauren, asked her for help, and boom, it looks beautiful. Also, our clips that you might see on Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube, Lauren is the one that makes all those clips for us. So thank you, Lauren. But Lauren has, her comment here is animal-based diet has definitely been a huge topic as of late. Dairy is for sure back. Exciting. Also, Derek Gould from Vibrance Marketing checking in. Derek said he was talking about his family. They're getting, there we go. There's the comment. I don't know if it's Alexander or Alexandre Farms. They're getting some A2 products there. There's a pretty good A2 product out that I've been checking out at Kimmerton Whole Foods. Boss Cow. I want to show them some love. That's a local PA company. They've been doing some. They do cookies and they do mac and cheese, which is like the A2 version of dairy for those products. So good to see that clean dairy coming out there. And then turning our attention to the craft beer, the beer discussion. So Brandon George, craft beer keeps rising. Younger people are going more with local beer. It's why big beer keeps acquiring smaller brands. And Brandon, I understand your perspective, but in talking to people, even the craft beer revolution, even that has lost some steam. And I subscribe to BevNet, and I get the various BevNet newsletters, and they do one for the alcohol industry. And every time I open up the newsletter, there are classified ads in those newsletters for companies liquidating microbreweries that are liquidating their whole equipment, their whole setup, and it's constant. So I think we're seeing some contraction there as well. To Jason and I's point, I think that the THC and the CBD drinks, they're capturing a lot of the momentum that craft beer had maybe 10 years ago. I feel like the pendulum has shifted there. And then Derek Gould again, talking about Breeze, or is it Brez or is it Breeze?
I think it's Brez.
All right. So, a non-THC drink, it's doing well. Hi-Yo is another one that I see all the time doing well. That's everywhere. I couldn't believe it. Hi-Yo was in the Wegmans vestibule. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Jason, how does a non-Wegmans product make it into the Wegmans vestibule? I want to know the answer to that. Did somebody write a check?
I don't know, Sam. I got to be honest. I was pretty surprised myself. So, good for them. I mean, and honestly, I saw them on racks. I mean, they're definitely making a lot of noise.
If Wegmans is open for business, I've got some ideas. I'd write a check for some demos there possibly, but that's neither here nor there. And then Derek Gould chiming in again. Ardor is good, light and refreshing. So I want to thank everybody. Oh, Brandon George, another comment here. Brandon's his comment. I've never really liked the THC bevs, but they will explode as the political climate keeps changing with them becoming more acceptable. Employee drug policies is a real thing, holding them back at the moment. That's a good point there. You have to be careful when consuming THC beverages. I know that we do some stuff for one of our clients. The client's called Artet. We represent them at some Total Wines in North Carolina and South Carolina. And Total Wine's blanket policy is, regardless of the state regulation, you cannot offer laced samples to customers. And I think a big reason of that is because there's a liability there. If somebody, doesn't know what they're doing, they take a sample, they take a drug test and they fail it and they get fired. probably a potential massive lawsuit there. So good point. And, Brandon makes another good point there about the taste. I've full disclosure, I've partaken in some of the THC beverages, and not a fan of the taste profile of most of them. I like the way they make me feel. But the taste profile isn't always the best. That's why I'm a big fan, and I am biased. They are a client, but if you check them out, I think you'll agree. Artet, taste-wise, is excellent. It's probably the best tasting THC drink that I've tried to date. So I want to show some love to Artet. Jason, anything to add there before we get to our main event?
Not a lot. I definitely another energy drink in this space that I've seen coming up a lot is Accelerator. I don't know if anyone's noticed them, but there's some big investors in it. Travis Kelce, Libby Dunn, Kai Trump. And, honestly, they're doing a really good job. They used to be A-Shock, and they've rebranded and a cleaner label now, took out the taurine even. That's another brand I'm watching. I think they have legs too. But no, this has been a great discussion. So,
and then one more comment before we get to our main event. Gary Stevens, go Phils! Thank you, Gary. Yep, there we go. Both Phils. But we are going to get to our main event. Let me there we go. Love doing all the graphics there. So this is our main event, and we'll breeze through this, but this is our red flags, green flags. We talked about founders that are bootstrapped, that instead of using an agency, may need to go in-house for a few people, whether it be a merchandiser or a demo or someone to help them out with a trade show. So if you're going on trustedherd.com and you start to reach out to some candidates, you're going to want to interview them and, vet them. And here's some red flags and green flags to note as you go through that process if you're a founder. So start out with the red flag on the left here. Candidate, if you reach out to a candidate, you check out their resume and you want to get them in for an interview, it's red flag if they're slow to respond repeatedly. And if they repeatedly use poor grammar and punctuation in their communication with you, that says to me that there's going to be some longer term communication issues if you work with them. A green flag will be on the opposite end of the spectrum there. If the candidate responds to all emails and texts quickly, and they're easy to understand and communicate with, that's a great box to check there. The red flag here, and Jason, you can chime in at any point if you have anything you want to add here, but red flag for me has always been if the candidate is aloof during recruiting. And what I mean by that, if they over communicate leading up to the interview and they're not organized, and what I mean by that is if they're not sure what they apply to, or they ask you to remind them of things, or there's a situation where it's just a TMI, too much information, and there's oversharing in a situation where they should be trying to impress you. To me, if they're giving you their life story right out of the gate, that is a sign of poor judgment skills and something you need to be very concerned about. The green flag answer to that, the candidate expresses excitement for the opportunity to interview, and it makes it clear they are excited about the possibility of representing your brand. The time with you is valuable. You want them to use that time not to talk about themselves, but talk about your brand and how they'd like to work for you. The red flag here on this side, candidate asks questions that could have been answered if they simply took the time to read your job description. Jason, when I get those questions, right, I don't even respond back. I know that they're not following the instructions to get the job. They're not going to follow the instructions once they have the job. So just keep that in mind. And then, the green flag response to that is the candidate asks great questions that weren't addressed in a job description. That means their mind is in the right place, that they are, potentially very organized, conscientious, and they're able to think for themselves and get ahead of things. So always love when I get great questions from candidates. Red flag here, when asked why they applied. When I asked the candidate why they applied during the interview, and the candidate can only focus on money and the location and only their needs, that's a red flag. What I want to really hear from them is when they asked why they applied, the candidate expresses to me that they want to work for my company and the brands that we represent. And they demonstrate that they've performed some level of research about the brand prior to the interview. It takes a matter of 2 minutes to go to a company's website and learn about the product. So, for candidates that come in completely cold, it doesn't mean I'm automatically going to not consider them, but that is definitely a knock against them. Another big red flag, Jason, the candidate interrupts during the interview multiple times, asks questions that I've already addressed, and they lack focus during the interview, and they repeatedly tell me how great and how busy they are. They want to make themselves sound like they're a big deal, and they're here and they're there and they're doing this and they're doing that. And it's like, look, let's focus. Let's talk about this, the job at hand and what we're interviewing for today. The green flag is that the candidate lets me finish statements and questions before they respond. They're thoughtful. They stay on point in response to those questions, and they give thoughtful answers. And they're confident in their abilities, but not cocky. You want, if you're looking at it from a perspective of you're hiring a brand ambassador, do a demo or a trade show, or be the face of your brand for the day, you want representatives of your brand that are affable, that are easy to like and present themselves in a favorable fashion, and are not going to turn off customers or key contacts and send them away. Red flag here: candidate starts asking questions about the software and the digital GPS check-in and checkout and your photo requirements. They're interested in all the logistics and things that really are kind of small details that are important after they get the job. But they're heavily focused on that. And when that happens, it raises a red flag for me, because the candidate leaves me wondering if they were probing me to see if they could find a way to get paid for fake demos. So be on the lookout for that. Listen to the kinds of questions that are being asked. That alone shouldn't rule out a candidate, but it's something you need to pay attention to. And, the green flag to that is if the candidate focuses more on impressing you and less about logistics, giving you no reason to believe that they are trying to see if they can get over on you with a fake demo. And then finally here, the red flag, green flag: candidate ignores job openings at store locations closest to them and only wants to work at locations furthest from them. It begs the question, why don't they want to work in locations that are near them in their community, that saves them time and money, rather than incurring greater expense to go travel out of region? The green flag is the candidate prefers to stay local and doesn't need to travel. This usually means they have a good or great relationships with store managers and members of their community. It also means candidate is good at what they do and has enough work being offered to them that they don't need to impact their income with extra travel costs. So, Jason, right out of the gate, I know I've been talking a lot, rambling there a little bit, but any thoughts in response to that slide there?
No, I think you nailed a lot of it. I mean, it's one of those things I've realized a lot when I was interviewing for Ithaca Hummus. And obviously, it was a specific company, but I was surprised at how many people I'd get on with on the call, and they just had no idea what they were interviewing for. And I was like, wow, did you read the job description at all?
Yeah.
And honestly, I was like having a conversation with them, and they had no clue like what they were going to be selling or what they were going to be doing. And that's the biggest red flag right there. I mean, and people definitely waste your time. So be thorough when you're going through and that's why I love Trusted Herd too, is it gives you a ranking so you can kind of vet people out before even having to reach out to them. And, it's kind of like an Airbnb scenario, right? You want to go to the super hosts, right? Like, you don't want to have to be stranded or in a situation where you're going to, be stuck with this person that isn't doing a good job or isn't showing up, or like Sam said, might show up and not do anything. You never know. You might just clock in, leave the store, come back, clock out. I've had that happen before. So, be as thorough as you can with people, especially when they're new. And if you don't have any experience or any recommendations to go from it, like I said, Trusted Herd's a great resource for that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And then before we go, we're in a couple minutes here. We're going to talk about what's next for the Demo Guys podcast. We have a free masterclass coming up. We'll talk to you about that in a little bit. But first, I want to remind everybody this episode is sponsored by Shelf Made and Retail Row. Shelf Made is a platform and community built specifically for product-based founders. Whether you're in food, beverage, beauty, or wellness, Shelf Made gives you access to real expert and founder support, weekly, as well as weekly strategy calls, office hours where you can ask questions and get answers in real time, and proven tools and templates to help you scale your brand and confidence. Those tools are exceptional. I've used them to get some store lists and get some information for clients. So there's a lot of questions that clients have. And if they had Retail Row, they'd be able to get a whole database full of access to these store lists and the information that they need that are key to growing their brand. But they've Shelfmade has also launched Retail Row, which I am a part of. It's a step-by-step retail readiness hub designed to help you get into top retailers like Target, Walmart, Whole Foods, Costco, and Amazon. Each section is taught by top-tier brokers who specialize in that exact retailer, people who've gotten hundreds of products on the shelf. You'll get insider strategy, buyer expectations, timelines, pitch templates, and live sessions to make sure you're fully prepared before you reach out to a buyer. And whether you're launching or scaling, Shelfmade and Retail Row are giving founders everything they need to win at retail without the guesswork. Check them out at shelfmadecpg.com. Let them know the Demo Guys sent you. Also, I just recently did an expert call this past week on Expert Row. It's a whole webinar on Costco demos and roadshows, how to win your Costco demos and roadshows. That's just an example of the type of expert calls you'll get with Retail Row through Shelfmade. So definitely want to make sure you guys check that out at shelfmadecpg.com. But Jason, that is it for the show today. Before we get out of here, I want to remind everybody, our next episode will not be on a Wednesday or Wednesday morning or afternoon or a Friday. It will be Wednesday night. This Wednesday night, it will air at 7 p.m. Eastern. Jason and I will bring you our second ever masterclass. It will be winning demos at Whole Foods. Can't tell you how many demos that we've booked, Jason, at Brand Ambassador Consultants the last 2 weeks for Whole Foods in August, at the end of August and September. It's back to school season. I think we're doing more Whole Foods demos in September than we did in July and August. There's just a huge push now to get Whole Foods demos going in September. So we thought it'd be timely if Jason and I did a masterclass this coming Wednesday live on LinkedIn Live and YouTube, where we're going to go over some key strategies and really best practices towards setting up demos at Whole Foods and executing them at a high level. Jason, any thoughts before we go on our masterclass coming up this Wednesday?
No, I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be very insightful, and we're gonna touch on the new Amazon delivery of Whole Foods perishables. I do want to touch on some strategies that you can use in demos that could really help you win in that too. So definitely tune in for that. It's going to be very insightful. It's going to be great. And thank you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Also want to say I will be at Newtopia on Wednesday. If anyone's going, I'd love to touch base with you guys. And looking forward to that.
Yeah, hit Jason up. His info is on the ticker there. Jason Conrad Smith at LinkedIn. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're going to see you Wednesday for the Demo Guys podcast. I'm Sam Caplan. He's Jason Smith. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.